Before I start with what I have to talk about, and I'm sure everyone are going to be fascinated with, I'd like to say one thing. I know the founders of 911 Restoration for many, many years, and I know of 911 since the day was just an idea, and then from the point of inception to what it is today. And I must say that it's amazing, and I'd like everybody to just put their hands together for them because they really deserve it. It's pretty amazing. And also, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here. Business Thru Government, as of today, is a California-based company. We're located across the state, working with close to 1,000 active government contractors who bid government bids on a daily basis. So we know a thing or two about communications with the government, which I think is our theme this year. And one thing that is important to understand when you're thinking about government work is that the way to communicate with government comes down to one thing, which is the paperwork. You don't understand the paperwork, you're most likely going to have a hard time getting any kind of results with dealing with government. Now, not sure if there's anyone here that already engaged in one way or another with any kind of government work, and the way I like to explain it, when we describe government, when people walk into our office and inquire about how they can get started, we describe government as anything paid for by our money, by tax dollars. That means it could be a school district, the city, police station, naturally a Navy base, or Border Patrol, Coast Guard, and I could go on and on. There's close to 3,000 different agencies that, well, spend a lot of money. Now, I think I chose the first statement there of no matter how you feel about it politically, the money is there, the government spends, the government is the largest purchaser of goods and services worldwide. And for California, for Southern California specifically, the government makes about 40% of the market. We got a combination here of large population, the border, and the ocean, that all three creates a lot of, needs and spending, and that's why a lot of money goes here. So if you're a business owner, small, medium, large, and you don't work with the government in your area, you're working or you're missing out on a significant portion of your local market. Now, doing what you guys are doing, restoration, mold remediation, water damage, floods, and of course the reconstruction afterwards, just like the neighborhood homeowner, business owner, the government runs into these situations as well. And to get in, so to speak, which everybody kind of look for the in. Everybody walk into our office and say, is this the right door to walk through getting into government? To get in, it's important to understand one thing. You got to disconnect yourself from the way you feel about who's running it, who signs the checks, who makes the decisions, and focus about their needs and about the check you're going to get at the end of your job. One thing that is a pleasure for small businesses today is that by law, state and local agencies are required to pay you within 30 days of billing, of course, for a job performed. Federal government for certified small businesses pays within 15 days under the Fast Pay Act enacted by the current administration. If we could go over to the next slide. There we go. This is, if you look at the red bars at the end, it represents an estimate. And it's typically within 1% to 3%, pretty close to reality. And if you look at it, it keeps going up. Government spending is up. Government spending would keep on being the way it is because we're talking about discretionary spendings. Even if you're thinking about cutbacks, you're thinking about government cutting down on their employees or shutting down some buildings or agencies that are operating, the bottom line is that anything that they used to do themselves and now they don't anymore because they had to downsize their workforce, it means that they're outsourcing it to businesses like you guys. When it comes to water damage, when it comes to, let me title it a little better, when it comes to emergency response, there are several ways to go about it. And it kind of comes down to which agency we are targeting that you want to offer your services to. And I think everyone in their own local market may have done a job here or there for the government, but there are things that are a little more consistent. And overall, there are contracts that would fit greatly, each and every one of you, that typically are on annual or biannual terms that allow you to be the go-to person, the person on call for any kind of flood, water damage, fire damage, mold that was discovered during a a project that is being conducted or what have you. When thinking, go over to the next one. When thinking about the opportunity, which is, I think, is the main thing I want you guys to grasp. There's quite a bit of money in government, and more than that, there's quite a bit of money that is quote-unquote guaranteed or set aside for small businesses. These are some 2013 data. As you know, the fiscal year for the government ends the end of September, and in October, the year starts again for their spending and budgets and what have you. And if you look at 2013, the government did better than prior years with spending the money on small businesses, but they're not quite there yet. We have a gap of over $60 billion between how much was spent and how much was guaranteed at the beginning of the year. Part of the, minor part, but part of the government shutdown that we all heard about, and I'm sure gave us mixed emotions. I definitely got mixed reviews about what I do for a living, because people ask me what I do, and I say government consultant, and during the shutdown they scratch their head and say, well, you're not doing your job good enough. And, you know, obviously it's got nothing to do with it, but 27 million small businesses in the country are legal and registered and for hire type businesses, when in fact just about 5% of them are registered to do government work. And just if you could raise your hand, tell me which of you guys is part of the 5%, that'll be just eye-opening to me. Okay, so we have a couple of people doing government work already. Good. Next slide. When thinking about government work, you have multiple levels of government. You got your local agencies, which is the state, the school district. I'm sorry, not the state, but the city, the county, the school districts, municipalities that operate different facilities and provide different services. You have the state-level agencies, which are universities, colleges, anything state-funded. Department of Motor Vehicles in California, the Highway Patrol. Caltrans is a very big contracting agency in California, as well as other state agencies in California alone. There's close to 100 of them that do contracting with small businesses. On the federal level, as we all know, there's a number of different outlets to find out about government agencies in your area and how to contact them, what's the right way to go. The response I typically get is that the tend to be kind of elusive, tend to be a little bit difficult for people to figure out and get work, while they'll see neighboring companies that have that do pretty well. Knowing your business is very, very important. When you meet a government buyer, when you go to a networking event, something along the lines of the one we're in today that is government related, it's very, very important to have your 30 seconds elevator spiel ready to tell them what you can do for them. Because they meet 5, 10, 15 small businesses in those conventions, sometimes even more. It's important to make a little bit of an impression. Drop your business card, make sure they know who you are. And more than that, make sure to get some sort of a next step. Get their card, tell them you're going to call them, stop by, drop a brochure, send a package, something that will remind them that you're there and you want to do business with them. Because persistence is key with government. Looking at, getting work. As I'm sure the few that are here that are part of the 5% know, there's a number of ways, and there's a number of programs, certifications that are designed and created to encourage small businesses to get work, whether if it's to get properly registered with the local agencies, getting certified as a small business. Now, in these categories of small businesses, we got a number of different highlights that if you meet each one of them, or at least one of them, you could definitely get some priorities, get some advantages, and get a leg up on certain bids, such as being a minority-owned company, being a woman-owned company, being a veteran-owned company, or even a disabled veteran-owned business, which not only allows you to get contracts just because you fit the profile of those businesses, but as you know, a lot of government contractors, and I'm talking large-scale, billion-dollar a month type of companies, they have a requirement to sub out some of their work to smaller businesses. And in your line of work, which is kind of unique because you have to be certified to handle things like mold abatement, mold remediation, to just the testing aspect of it. The typical construction engineering company would not be doing anything like that in-house. So by being a company that is certified as a small business, as a minority or a woman or a veteran-owned, and offering these services, you'll typically get a good amount of inquiries just because they need the kind of work you can provide, plus you help them meet their subcontracting minority goals. Get acquainted with the process. Get acquainted more than that with the paperwork. As I started my little spiel, the paperwork is key with bidding government work. Because you could be a minority-owned small business. You could be a veteran. You could be a woman. You could be the only guy down the street that can do the type of work that they want you to do. But if you don't do the paperwork well enough, you're not going to get the contract. And I'm sure there are some people here who have experienced that. If you forget, if you just mess up somewhere along the lines of form and manner or compliance, your bid typically gets rejected. And that's why I have a job. But in reality, when you're looking to get results, you're looking to make sure that you look good on paper before you look good in the field, because that is what will come next. Bids, RFPs, pre-qualifications, all these apply to you guys. There are bids, there are contracts that are being put out by typically large establishments. I'm not talking about something small like a little office.
What is RFP?
I'm just about to get to that. Bids that are being put out that are for your line of work. Anything from board-up services to being on call for water damage or fire damage response and things along those lines. Those are typically long-term contracts where you include your rates, hourly rates, line item, as I heard the previous speaker mention. Whatever the requirement of the bid is, you break it down properly. Exactimate is fairly close to the way they like to see it. Typically, minor adjustments do the trick along the lines or in addition to the rest of the paperwork that's required. RFP is request for proposals. Are typically being put out by federal agencies. Bids are more on the local level. RFPs are requests for proposal, meaning they have a specific job in mind they want you to do. Again, it could be something along the lines of a long-term contract, something called a BPA, a blanket purchase agreement, that again, they approve your company for a certain amount of work, and then they just keep feeding you purchase orders as the needs arise. If you get pre-qualified, that's another important thing to understand. A lot of agencies, typically colleges that have dormitories and classrooms and laboratories and sometimes medical centers, they love doing pre-qualifications because they focus on it for 1 month a year. They accept everyone's applications, everyone's capability statements, which is a key factor of every proposal you're going to turn in, and evaluate and classify you in a certain category, assuming the paperwork is fine and everything is accepted and looks good. They classify you into the category of the work that you can provide. And again, as soon as the need arises, you're the ones that are getting solicited. By phone, by email, depends on the level of emergency we're talking about. And the job most likely will be yours, again, based on your area, response time, and some other variables. A lot easier to get work that way than sitting and hitting refresh on your monitor every day and waiting for a bid to surface that fits exactly you. That will happen, but not as often. When you're pre-qualified, when you're pre-approved for a certain agency, it also looks good on your resume. It looks good when you want to sell the company. Didn't say that. When you think about developing, when you're thinking about expanding to a different area, when you're thinking about going after a bigger client that you want to do the same kind of work for, like Google for someone who's in the Bay Area, or for Qualcomm if you're in San Diego. If you are pre-approved to work with UCLA, they'll look at you differently whether if you're just another restoration company down the street. Very, very important to understand that communication plays a key factor in that aspect of work as well. Local advantage is a big deal as well. Considering the country we're in has 48 domestic states, we have a lot of companies that either expand to new markets or, when something, God forbid, dangerous happens like Sandy or Katrina, that I'm sure you guys all have some different experiences from. A lot of companies send crews across state lines to do work elsewhere. That's great, and I'm sure everybody gets a nice payday at the end of that. But there's a local advantage, because when you apply to do business with your local city, the city of Denver, or Phoenix, or Detroit, as soon as they finish their bankruptcy, or whatever the case might be, they would prefer to use you because you're local. Make sure they know that you're local. Because by being local, you're hiring local, you're spending local, and you're keeping the money local, which is an advantage in their eyes as well. In fact, certain cities go to the next level of that in creating programs that pre-certify people as a small local business. In San Diego, we have the Small Local Business Enterprise Program, and that actually allows a local business to have a 5% advantage over people from outside of the area. Great program to be in, very recommended for everyone to check the local markets and see if it's available. Keeping in touch. What we're talking about is what I started with. You go to a networking event, you do one job to an agency. Keep in touch. Send them a certificate of thank you for the opportunity of doing business with them. Ask them to write a letter of how happy they were with your service so you can use it with other agencies. Most importantly, stay on the radar. Get on their email list. Find out when they're doing outreach events or when they're working with a large general contractor who needs local subs for some of their participation requirements. I'm sure there's nothing foreign to anyone here on the list that's on the wall right now. And the reason I wanted to break it down that way is because every level of government, whether if it's local, municipalities, state, or federal and defense, purchase each and every one of the items on the list. I'm sure there are companies here that provide services that are beyond the list, like demolition or even the reconstruction, and have the ability to bid general construction projects as well. And I do definitely highly recommend that. As a business development company, I can tell you that 80% of our client base is in the construction and construction-related fields. So that is our specialty, and I know that there's plenty of work in that. Several different ways to do business and to get work in each and every one of these categories. One major one is the GSA, the General Services Administration. It's what it is the purchasing arm of the federal government. GSA represents federal buyers. So anybody who's a contracting officer or a purchasing agent for a federal agency have the ability to go into the database, the GSA database, which is almost like a large government phone book for vendors, which once you're approved, your profile is going to be in the GSA database. It's going to include, again, your capability statement. It's going to include your price lists. It's going to include information about your company, your previous experience, and definitely your phone number, contact person, and email address. And they're able to call you through the GSA database, and if it's a response, an emergency situation, just call you and ask you to come in and do the work that they need you to do. GSA can be a lengthy process regardless of who I represent. I definitely recommend to use an outsourcing company to package the application because it's very easy to get it wrong, and it's very easy for the application to be very time-consuming. Now, not to say that it's going to be quick when you use someone who does this for a living. It's not necessarily going to cut the time frame down, but it's definitely going to make your lives easier. Because terminology, requirements, and the understanding someone who does it for a living will have, it's something that each and every one of you as a business owner that has a business to run would have a little bit of a hard time grasping. And same goes for state projects. And again, I'll use the state of California as an example. The state of California has something called CMAS, which is the California Multiple Award Schedules. And really all it is a miniature version of GSA. And the reason we're very big on getting people on CMAS contracts is because the state of California is, I believe, around the 6th largest economy in the world as a state. So it is a pretty big spender as well. And then if you have a GSA schedule to get a CMAS with the state of California, it's pretty easy. Because it's almost them duplicating it's filing an application and referring them to your current GSA schedule, and it's a very, very short and productive process. An average of $15,000 per second on small businesses. I'm not talking about general spending budget. And everybody here can check my math, but if you divide 350 billion times the number of seconds we have a year, you'll get about $15,000. And what I like to kind of highlight when I say that is that $15,000 per second is being spent. It is not going to be difficult to get some of that to go your way. It's not rocket science. What we do each and every one of you can do. The only difference is we do it for a living, we do it quick, we do it right, and we're pretty aggressive about it. As the subtitle says there, that is us, that is what we do. Obviously, I'm not here to sell my services to anybody. Anybody can ask questions, want to get clarifications. Crickets? Please. Yes? Actually, to answer that question, we have an office coming. Okay. We have an office that's going to be coming up in New York, New Jersey area. I was there last January working on some of the details, and I do not miss the weather, I'll tell you that. But I'm not going to be there full time, so that's okay. But East Coast, no problem. In terms of everybody keep asking me about the unions and all that. We got unions in California as well, and as long as you understand the type of requirements that they place on your contract and how to meet them, they're not of any hazard or problem to you. The East Coast, we're in the East Coast, by the way. New York, New Jersey, perfect. The East Coast as a whole, the Northeast in particular, has a large population gathering. And if you look at the government spending list by state, again, I'll proudly say California is number one. There's more money going here than any other state. But the top 5 on the list, and some of these might surprise you. Number 1 is California. Number 2 is naturally Virginia, D.C., Maryland area, which kind of rubs shoulders with New York, New Jersey. So I kind of look at it all as one giant, the government spending pit, if you may. Also on the top 5, you have the state of Washington, the state of Texas, and the state of South Carolina. When you're thinking about government, and I'm talking in general terms and big numbers because that's what the government is. If you look at statistics, these are the numbers. When you're looking at what you can get for your own company, naturally you start small. You start with a $5, $10, $20, maybe even $50 or $100,000 job. The way to do that, it starts with the basic. You got to get registered. You got to get certified. The different registrations that are required, it starts with the simple stuff like your DUNS number, your SAM registration and approval. Create your government profile. SAM is a government spread database. And these are specific questions because they might vary per company. In SAM, there's a number of different profiles you can choose. So again, starting with small business, moving on to minority and other highlights that your business would meet. It comes down a lot to your annual revenue as well, a number of employees that may or may not exclude you from the small business game altogether. Beyond that, there's a lot of legwork. You got to go to networking events. You got to put yourself in front, and I know we all love Google here, and it's a big part of everyone's success here. But and when you're talking government, Google doesn't help. They're not going to go read your Yelp reviews. They're not going to go to look at pay-per-click. What they'll do is solicit your business by putting out a bid that you guys will have to find out about, respond to, track addendums, and of course be in compliance and not have any foreign manner issue. So baby steps at first, but once you kind of get the ball rolling, it's one of those things that you can just go bigger on. And I promise you, I know a lot of large companies, because of what I do, we have the bigger, large-scale contractors, companies like McCarthy or Perini or Pinnick in San Diego is about a $250 million a year company, and they're considered medium in government. We have a lot of these big companies, every time they have a project in the area we have an office in, they want us to help them meet their subcontracting requirements. So they'll come to us looking for businesses like you that are properly certified and can handle small portions of the big project. And that's another good way to go. Subcontracting, I think it was on one of the slides somewhere. Subcontracting is a big deal because, again, you provide services that these larger contractors are required to include on their bids. And by being a certified small business, you'll help them in every aspect, not just providing the work, but also meeting certain participation guidelines. We have, but again, this is very individual. It all depends what we're doing for you. As far as we operate, we have...
So that's what we expect.
Of course, of course. I don't think we could have operated any other way because the company is originally Israeli-owned and founded. primarily, I would say 90% of our revenue across the board comes from success fees. And I'll say that again, if you don't win, we don't win. It's about 90% of our work. That's a big key. But to get into government, to go through all the different bullet points that I had in the slide there, getting registered, certified, getting approved, getting out there to follow our guidelines, there's a lot of legwork to do. That requires us to invest in your company. And we're not going to invest in your company if you're not looking to invest in your company either. So to us, whatever initiation fee or application fee we may or may not have depends on what kind of service you're requiring from us. If you're not going to risk on investing in your own business, we couldn't do that either. That's kind of like our policy. There's a few certifications we do for free, such as disabled veteran and veteran-owned certifications. That's our way of giving back to the people who serve the country. We are, after all, government associated, so that is definitely something we're big on. But aside of that, the majority of our work comes from success fees. And although there may be an initiation fee for one of our programs, it typically includes a year of our work on the line. So we sign an annual commitment to work for you for typically a negligible initiation fee that probably equates to about a week worth of your Google budget, if that. And later on, if you don't win, we don't win. So we work very hard to make sure that you win.
So basically, what is the amount, the initiation fee, like to start up?
I just love to go into specifics. The amount varies.
The success, I mean, what's the percentage after?
Okay, the amount varies. It all depends what program we're going to do for you. It all depends what certifications you qualify for. I need to have, on average, a 45-minute sit-down with every business owner to give them my best recommendation on the way to go and attack the government from a business point of view, in case, I don't know, the florist is listening to us. Does that answer your question? So a number I cannot give you. It ranges anywhere from 1,000 to sometimes 10 and 15,000. But it all depends what we're going after.
And with the success, the percentage that you guys...
With people who participate, follow our footsteps, and listen to our advice and guidelines, we have a 90% success ratio.
No, it means, so what's your royalty, basically? What you getting?
Oh, okay. Sorry, didn't understand that. It's another thing that varies. It usually revolves anywhere from 2 to 6%. It depends on the size and longevity of contracts.
What's your contact information?
I got a couple of business cards with me. I'll be happy to share them. Should have had a slide with my contact info on there next time, duly noted. But pretty easy to look up online, Business Thru Government. I'll give my cards to everyone. You can get my cell phone number from a number of the people I know closer here. Again, I'd like to say, and honestly, my intention wasn't to make this, a explanation about who we are, but more of about the opportunity with government. But since we cover that, our company specializes in developing small businesses through government work. And the typical small businesses we get are people that don't work with the government yet, or maybe in a minor capacity. They work with 1 or 2 agencies, did a couple of jobs, and looking to expand on that. That is our specialty. And I have a strong feeling that a lot of you are coming from that starting point. Anyone else? All right, well.
How many restoration companies you have in your working with your company right now?
That's a good question. I personally work with 2 in the San Diego area. We do not work with them, though, on any one of the services that I've listed there on water damage or anything like that. They both hold a general contracting license along with asbestos and other endorsements they have to their license, and that is the type of work they're going after. All the emergency response that they do in terms of water damage is all insurance work. And I know about a half a dozen different surf pros down the street from me, so I don't know if 911 is completely segregated, but we don't cross-compete. So if you hire us to go on a specific bid and your neighbor from down the street calls us to go after that same bid as well, we wouldn't be able to offer them our services.